So the next step is to figure out how to get these two answers that we got from the graph, but without graphing. So looking over here, using everything you know about solving equations, what do you think the first step could be in order to get an answer of 6? Yeah, add 5. So we're going to use a lot of the same rules that we've always used. Like if it has a minus 5, we can solve that by adding 5 to both sides. Okay? So go ahead and do that. Add 5 to both sides. 5 minus 5 is 0, cancels out. So the left side, we're left with absolute value of x, and the right-hand side is 1 plus 5, which is 6. So we're kind of halfway there. We got one of the answers. So this is the new part, and this is the only new part of all this today, is, well, if I know at x equals 6, that means you're done. But what happens if absolute value of x equals 6? So what you're going to do, is think backwards and ask yourself, what two numbers, if you take the absolute value of, you get 6. So what two numbers, if you take the absolute value of, does give you an answer of 6? Right? And you end up with negative 6 and 6, positive 6. Yeah. So that's how we get our two answers. Because the absolute value of positive 6, if you plug in positive 6, that equals 6. But the absolute value of negative 6 also equals positive 6. So those are the two values. If you take the absolute value of them, you get an answer of 6. Okay? And that's how you end up with 6 and negative 6. So the general rule is you're going to have stuff on the outside of the absolute value. You're going to do the opposite or inverse operation like you've always done. If it's a minus 5, you're going to add 5. Okay? If it's a times 2, you're going to divide by 2. Just like we've always had. So trust your instincts on everything that you've already done before. It's going to be very similar. Don't change any rules or do anything different than you wouldn't have done before. Okay. Now this doesn't have anything on the outside of the absolute value. So we're not going to start off by subtracting 3, but you're going to start off by saying, okay, everything inside the absolute value, that's going to equal positive 1, or it's going to equal negative 1. Just like we did above. So anything in the absolute value, you break it up into two parts. That's how you're going to get your two answers. One from the left side and one from the right side. And when you solve each of those individually, I subtract 3 on both sides. That's when you get, let's see here, 1 minus 3 is negative 2. And negative 1 minus 3 is a negative 4. So we get the same two answers, of course. We're solving the same problem, so we should be getting the same answers. Now, so the majority of figuring out how to do these is really reminding yourself how to solve equations. Absolute value is just one more step at the very end. So far, so good. So just a few more. Okay, how would you take care of the 1/2 that's on the outside here? That's on the outside, so we have to take care of that before we break it up. So think back, if you have like a 1/2 x equals like 8, how would you solve that equation? Yeah. Close. Multiply it by the reciprocal, both sides. So same rules we've always done, right? Because we multiply reciprocals, they cancel out, equal 1. So we're going to do the same thing we've always done, nothing new. Try to remember what it is that we've always done. So 2 times 1/2 makes 1. And 3 times 2 over 1 is 6. And now you can see there's nothing else on the outside of the absolute value. Now you can break it up into 2 parts, just like we did above up here. One's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. So we're going to have 2 of them. Go ahead and write them out. What are the 2 equations? Write them out, like we did before. you don't get the same two answers we already got using the graphing method, something is wrong, we need to find the mistake. But you should get the same two answers. X equals 6 plus 4 gives us the 10. And we get x equals negative 6 plus 4. That will give us the So this is going to be your homework to finish up this paper. And then you have another paper that has only the equations with no graphing. So we're going to transition from graphing and algebraic to only algebraic, trying to get the answers without having the graphing. So here we have two numbers on number 4. We have two numbers on the outside. Which one should we take care of first? So think back when you were solving without absolute value, like if you just had negative 2x plus 8 equals 8. Would you subtract 8 first or divide by negative 2 first? Yeah, you do the subtraction first. So the same rules that you've always done, make sure you keep doing those. Okay. So we can start out by subtracting 8 on both sides. A two-step here. 8 minus 8 cancels out as well. 0. And since you already know what the answer is, you can kind of see. How do you know when you get an answer of 0? Yeah, it looks a little different than the other ones. You divide by negative 2, right? And 0 divided by negative 2 is still 0. Again, we have one answer. And if you try to do the same steps we've done before, it doesn't make any sense because there's no such thing as a positive 0. You can't really break it up into positive 0 and negative 0. These don't exist. Okay? So the answer is just 0. And we just say, no such thing as positive, negative 0. So if you ever have absolute value of x equals 0, it means that x equals 0, and there's only one answer. So go ahead and flip it over. Try a few on the back on your own. Check with your neighbor. And here, again, we have to take care of the two parts that are on the outside first. So we have a positive 7 on the outside, and we have a negative or a negative 1 if you want to prefer to write in negative 1. So I know I need to subtract 7 first from both sides, and then divide both sides by negative 1. So first step, you have to just identify what it is you're supposed to be doing. Everything on the outside first. You need to write notes. If you're one that takes notes, this is where you write on the side or in your notebook, okay, take care of everything on the outside first. Addition first, then multiplying, dividing, multiply by reciprocal, things like that. So we have this. And I'm not doing anything with this plus 3 because it's on the inside. Okay. And then we can divide by negative 1 both sides. Negative over negative cancels out. Now we just have x plus 3 equals 5. Then we can break it up. We have nothing else on the outside. Break it up. So we have what plus 3 equals positive 5, and what plus 3 equals negative 5. And you should get the same two answers. On number 6, a little different, something that we already know the answer is what? What's the answer on number 6 according to the graph? No solution. Yeah, 2 lines don't intersect on number 6 graph. So here's how you know if you have a no solution. If the absolute value when there's nothing else around, you just have absolute value. If that equals a negative, okay, that means absolute value equals a negative number. That's how you know. That's how you know it's in the solution. Okay. If you start looking at the definition of absolute value is a distance, like how far something is away from something else. So to say that the distance here is going to be negative, like negative 5 feet away or negative a mile away, it doesn't make sense. Something can't be a negative mile away. You know, even if you drive backwards, it's still a mile away. So that's why we say if it's equal to a negative, there's no solution. Okay? All right, finish up the rest of this and start the other worksheet.